Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are around the world. Welcome back to the Casual Spikes podcast, episode 21. I'm Dakota, that's Randy, and we got a pretty exciting episode for y'all today as we got some pretty big organized play announcement news. We have a pretty good idea of what the rest of 2024 and into 2025 is going to look like for competitive Magic, and of course, some controversy, which Wizards can't seem to escape one way or another, has kind of come out from this, and we're going to be covering all that in today's episode. But before we get in deep to whatever subjects we're going to end up talking about, because it's going to devolve into some other stuff, I'm not even going to lie to you. But, if you want to support either of our channels, you can support me personally by subscribing to this channel, and Randy's channel will be linked in the description down below, and I'm sure probably annotated somewhere when I actually get around to editing the episode and everything like that. Randy, I'm going to ask you how you're doing, and please don't do the thing.
I'm doing well, but Pioneer is dead.
You should have said, like, I'm doing well, I'm doing a lot better than Pioneer.
I mean, I am. I'm not a dead format now.
That is true.
Pioneer is not dead. Wizards did do some controversial things, as Wizards seems to like to do, but we'll get into that here in a little bit.
Of course, and something that I am now remembering to do, because I'm starting to get maybe just a little bit better at this YouTube thing 2.5 years later. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about the podcast, feel free to leave those suggestions, anything like that, in the comments down below. I want to work on trying to feature like questions, maybe get some kind of segment going there. So if you have any questions about really anything pertaining to Modern Pioneer or constructed Magic just in general, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. People do ask questions down there. I try to answer them as quickly as possible most of the time. So if you want a question or anything like I featured in the video, please feel free to do so. I think that would be so cool to actually get people's questions and like suggestions and things like that, kind of as like a way, something we could talk about.
Yes, as I don't feel afraid to ask any questions about really any constructed format. Just know that if you ask about Legacy or Vintage, our information will be very limited on the facts of what we know about those formats. I know Legacy is a format. I've played in Legacy, not for probably like 6 years now, and I kind of understand it. Vintage has Magic cards in it. I'm pretty sure of that. That's about my knowledge of Vintage.
Vintage arguably has the best Magic cards in it. Arguably.
Well, yeah, it has all the great old spells of Magic and the new creatures.
True. So we'll kind of kick things off. I had said in the beginning, we had some major organized play announcements made on Tuesday during the weekly Magic stream on Twitch, and it basically gave us kind of an outline of what to expect as far as competitive play goes, going from, for the rest of 2024, as the Modern RCQ season is going to be ending here shortly. In November to March, we'll pick up on Standard, and that'll roll us out into the 2025 year. So, Randy, we talked about in the beginning, we're going to go bottom to top. We're going to talk about the different ways to essentially qualify for the next level of competitive play and try to go through, the 3 levels here. So we'll start with the RCQs. That's the easiest thing. That's the way that you've been able to qualify for, things like the regional championship, and eventually is like a way to qualify for the Pro Tour. Simplest way, win, you're in.
Yeah. It sounds so. It's one of those things where it's both very simple and very hard at the same time, because obviously you're playing in your local events or semi-local. I'm going to say that most people aren't traveling more than 3 hours for an RCQ, and if you have Saturdays off, you're traveling like 5 minutes for your local RCQs. If you have Sundays off, good luck, because that's my vote. But mostly, you're playing in locals, you're playing against people you probably know as a whole. If you've played in competitive Magic for any amount of time, you're probably running into people you've seen before, or, the grinders you've seen before, things like that. So it's not, locals are usually easy to win in the sense of, like, you kind of understand what your competition is going to be, you kind of know what your play level is going to be. And obviously, variance is a thing. It's hard. It's easy to go, just win an RCQ. Just win it. It's not that hard. Come on. But it is the easiest way to start climbing up that essential ladder of pro play that is Magic. because you get your RCQ win, then you get to your invite to the RC, and then you spike that RC, you get your invite to the Pro Tour, you spike that Pro Tour, you get your invite to the Worlds, and you just win the Worlds. I mean, it's just that simple. Look, 4 wins and you're in. I don't know why people don't do this more often.
4 wins and they will know your name for roughly a season, because then there's like absolutely zero advertising for the players that play this game, unfortunately. But just know that you are appreciated here on this channel, for sure.
Just know that if you ask us 2 years later, we're not going to know your name.
Also true. But, as Randy was saying, like, this is like one of the basic and easiest ways. This is essentially the entry level of competitive play. If you have one of those stores that is able to run an FNM and they do something like, modern, pioneer, standard, or something like that, something that we've known to, be formats that are played in these RCQs, then, great. That could be kind of the first stepping stone. But I think in general, for a lot of people, that first stepping stone is going to be RCQs. And as I was mentioning earlier, modern is the current RCQ season that we're in, plus limited, and we're going to be rolling into standard, at the end of 2024 through the beginning of 2025. Then we're going to be going back to modern in quarter 3, or quarter 3.
No, quarter 2.
Is it quarter 2?
It's quarter 2.
Okay.
Yeah, because quarter 1 is technically the end of the new year, or end of the old year and beginning of the new year. They're going based off of like the quarter systems more so for like a business and things like that. So they're a little, quarter 1 and quarter 4 are a little wonky on where they fall timeline wise, and for that kind of stuff.
Hey, not to totally date this at all, but hey, the Guardians came back and they're down 6-5.
Ooh, look at that!
Like the tying run on base. You love to see it. Go Guards. But yeah, you're right. I think I kind of confused myself because I put modern and then double standard. So and double standard shouldn't have meant that WotC has a double standard. It was just like there's 2 standard seasons back to back. So that being said, quarter 1, as you were saying, is the standard going from November to March. Then we're gonna have modern, presumably for probably 3 months, and then we'll be looking at standard back to back. Of course, limited thrown in with all those.
Yes, and the caveat is you can always play a limited RCQ as well with any of these. They've always had format and then limited as well. Mm-hmm. So, not so someone can't yell in the comments. Actually, you can play limited for any of these as well.
Mm-hmm. And even then too, I guess there's like a small subset of events. Basically, anybody that's like I would assume not an LGS, or maybe an LGS that's kind of hosting a special event, they classify it as like a ballroom or anything like that. Like those kind of like big events, you can run whatever format you want. So while you might have noticed in mentioning all this and why Randy was just so geeked out into saying Pioneer's a dead format, Pioneer doesn't have a traditional RCQ season tied to it. Essentially, the only way that you're going to be able to play Pioneer is through through one of those special events that if the host decides that this is the format that they want to host, then they can play it. But aside from that, you're not going to be able to go to your store and play Pioneer.
It's like a destination RCQ.
Destination RCQs or anything like that. I don't know if they kept them like separate or not from like if those were mutually exclusive or if they're the same. But
so they don't matter. Like they don't matter now. But so how the RCQs used to work before Star City took over. I'm pretty sure before Star City took over. So like say you played in the first RCQ of the season and you qualified. You can't play in any more RCQs because you are no longer like that would like so if you won that one, that takes away your old because you can't double queue. You couldn't double queue, right? Mm-hmm. So you couldn't play in any other ones, but you could play in the destination RCQs. So like when Star City was doing like their 10K or 20Ks, that was a destination RCQ. So that way everyone could play in it, type deal. And you had those, and then so like Apex. For anybody who doesn't know them, look them up. They're a great store here in Ohio. They've been like branching out and actually getting competitive play going out through Ohio and the other areas, trying to do what the NRG series does, essentially slowly growing, getting bigger and bigger. Really great community there. But like they have destination RCQs because when they do like their 5K events and stuff like that, it's big enough to be like a ballroom type setting because they have 100 people playing in these 5Ks type things, and then they have the other events going on, and it's almost like a mini like SGG tournament basically, where they have all these things, but they have the Destination RCQ as well.
Yeah, a lot of good players also play in that Apex series as well. Like some really good players.
Yep, that I also play too.
Yeah, like I said, some really good players like play. I'm kidding. But yeah, like so that's I think that's the one that players are going to be the most ingrained with. They're going to be the most like familiar with is the RCQ format. Like that is going to be the thing that more than likely the majority of players that qualify for the regional championship end up playing in is an RCQ. And to that point, I believe that there is like outside of like a few small ways of actually qualifying, that was like the only way to qualify for a regional championship.
Yeah, it was for the longest time. The other ways were like the problem was like you had like the 10Ks and stuff that SCG did, but they were just destination RCQ.
Yeah,
So like they were still an RCQ basically it's just you went the hard way to qualify basically. Like, hey man, I know like there was a local tournament of 32 people. I decided to go to the one that had like the 10K prize limit and like 500, 600 people. I wanted to win that way because I'm a tryhard.
That looks way cooler on the stat sheet than winning a 7-person RCQ.
Exactly.
Some would argue, but so that's kind of like the typical thing. I guess also too the promos coming up for next month as well, or for the next season, is pretty funny because I think it follows that theme of promos that don't make any sense for the season, for the format that you're playing in that season. Unless, we're going to be completely wrong, and then these cards are going to be printed in Foundations, which would be hilarious, but...
I don't see the Mayhem Devil getting printed in Foundations.
No, or Force of Despair.
I mean, Force of Despair can get printed in Foundations, that's fine. That card's trash. It will see 0 play. People are going to open it up and be sad.
You heard it here first. It's going to be a standard staple, y'all. Like, buy your copies now.
Buy your nickel copies now.
But yeah, from what I gather and from what I understand, I'm going to assume that the Mayhem Devil will be the participation, which is confirmed, I guess, by Twitter online and X and the Magic community, that this vampire that they have featured on the art is like 70% gay. Now, I don't know if that's like it's just kind of a weird thing, but like the art is super sick. I'm a big fan of it.
I am too. I'm a fan of the Force of Despair art too. I think it's really cool art. Mm-hmm. I'm sad that the artist had to do it on such like a no-name card essentially. It's one of those classics where like artists always have like these amazing arts and they're always on like these like 25-cent commons that see 0 play, and it's like, yeah man, I want a copy of that art. It's some of my worst art. Yeah, but it's on this cool card that like I play 4 of it in like every deck I play. Yeah. Here you go.
What we're saying is like let's put better art on better cards.
Listen, we know what cards are going to be good. Just put the good art on the good cards. Come on.
Thank you. Here our prize.
But there's also the Spotlight series, which is a new series that they're bringing out. Essentially, kind of bringing back like the GPs essentially of old. Where if you top 8 one of those, you get a Pro Tour invite as well as your RC invite as well. And I think there's here it is. So yeah, that's basically I lied. It is just a Pro Tour invite for the top 8. My mistake. Yeah. It is not an RC invite. So, but basically another way to get to the Pro Tour, which everyone is essentially trying to do who's playing competitive Magic.
Yeah, the Spotlight series is the new thing they're bringing up. There's going to be 5 in the United States, hosted by Star City Games, with one of them already scheduled to be in Atlanta, come January 3rd through the 5th. There's going to be 2 in Europe. I can't remember. I think it's like Playfinity or something like that.
Yeah,
maybe it's not like that. Maybe it's not that name because I think maybe I don't know.
But it's whoever does the European tournaments already. Yeah, I know they have a group that already does that stuff.
Yep. There's only going to be 8 total, 5 in the United States, or at least 5 in North America by Star City. There's going to be 2 in Europe and then 1 in Japan, which the one in Europe is already scheduled for Utrecht. coming up in like March, I believe. So there's like 2 overseas ones that are to be determined, and 4 still in North America that are also to be determined. But as Randy was saying, that's like another way you can qualify for the Pro Tour. Very GP-esque, because back in the day, aside from getting pro points, and if you got enough points, you could get an invite. Back in the old days, when Tarmogoyf was a $100 card. Top 8 gets into the Pro Tour. There's a 50K cash prize total, I guess. 50K cash prize pool. That's what I wanted to see. Top 8 gets an invite to the PT. And the winner, this is pretty cool. On top of probably getting a really cool trophy, which I so badly want one of those trophies. I'm literally going to sell my soul for a trophy, or find someone who's really good at making them. You would get a case of each play booster to be released in 2025.
Yeah, which is kind of wild to think about. Like, that is, it's just like, hey man, I saw you win the standard tournament. Would you also like to have cards for the whole standard season? We got you.
If I knew I could get like 13, 14 card boosters on Arena, I'd be like, give me a case of each set in 2025 to open up on Arena, for the fact that then like you just never have to spend money on Arena ever again for that year. You win 1 Spotlight Series, like you're set for standard for that year.
Yeah. Also, they're doing a new promo art card as well. Terror of the Peaks is getting a promo card. Looks pretty sweet. It's a whole like full art card. It's not full art. I guess it's extended border card, but it looks really sweet. It's not a super good card in my set. Like, it's not like a super standard playable card, but it is like, I know Commander players love that card. Things like that. I think as of right now, that card's like a $25 card. Obviously, I don't know if Terror of the Peaks is going to be the promo for all the Spotlight challenges in North America, or if it's just going to be for the first one, and then the next 40 other ones are going to have different ones. We're not really 100% sure on the logistics of all that. So it will be interesting to see if it's going to be just that one, or if it's going to be, for all the North American Spotlight challenges, or Spotlight series. Sorry.
I'm kind of hoping they're different, because I saw that the Utrecht one as well has like a different promo from Terror of the Peaks. It's actually the Cauldron Complete equipment for players that participate, and then I believe if you top 8, I think it's just the top 8, gets a foil version of that card as well.
The top 128.
Okay. Yeah. As soon as I said top 8, I was like, I already know that's wrong.
Yeah, 128 will get a foil version of it as well. And notably, at least the Star City version is only paying down to the top 64 for like actual money.
I mean, still 50K cash prize, or 50K total prize pool is pretty sick, and then all the other stuff they're giving out on top of it. That's a lot of, I think just a lot of value for essentially the return of GPs.
Yeah, I mean, with the entry price of being like $75 too, like, we are definitely this is a GP, just not call it a GP. Like, let's be honest. Like, and I'm fine. You want to call it something different. GPs don't have a significant meaning, in my opinion, for the name. Like, you want to call it, the Spotlight series or whatever. Great. I'm just happy to have. I'm happy to have competitive play coming back in such a big way. COVID hit and it like destroyed competitive play, and it left a lot of Magic players kind of floundering. And like, now we built back into the RCQ. We've made the RCQ season, or the RCQ like circuit with the RCs. That's been great. Now we have like GPs essentially coming back. Like, this is just more good news. I want to get back to the point where we had like an open going on every weekend, and you could just tune into Twitch and watch it. Like, I would love to get back to that that point. That would be peak Magic to me.
Yeah, I think slowly we're kind of getting back all the things that were kind of lost due to COVID and like the restriction, gathering restrictions and things of that nature, and with the return of the Spotlight series is just kind of like another step towards, I think the only thing stopping us from getting like everything back is the fact that now instead of like Channel Fireball and stuff like that owning like actual Grand Prix or like Magic Fest as they were called later, and then also having the Star City Games open, it's now Star City is the one putting on these Spotlight events as well. So, I doubt that we see the same company host like their own open series I mean, I guess they technically will be, but I think the Spotlight series are also just ingrained with SEG Con as well. So,
Yeah,
so
we'll see.
yeah, but either way, we're like 95% of the way back. And honestly, if it somehow stops here and we just improve all these stuff, all these things, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm still super happy with how far we've come from how far we've fallen. And I will say, I think the RCQ um, series event, however you want to call it, like I think this is a much better system than what we've had before. I think it's a lot easier to get into the Pro Tour, and I think now that we've also split the RCs and it being two in North America is a lot better because we just went to that one in DC and it was over 1,800 players. Like that is crazy. Like there's people there was statistic possibility of going undefeated day one and still not like top 8ing or top 16ing. Like
Going
that's
undefeated on day one, and there was going to be two other players that are undefeated as well.
yeah, the fact that there was 3 players 9-0 on day one, like it's not that it's crazy, but like you shouldn't have that many players. Like that's a little extreme.
I mean, let's go back to the GP days. 1,500 player like GPs.
Yeah,
But those are essentially like your two easiest paths to getting to the regional championship and getting to participate in one of those events with I guess the RCQs is like the only way you can get there, but the Spotlight
yeah,
series feeding directly into the Pro Tour, so you just kind of get to skip the whole RC thing altogether. Obviously, you could still compete in the regional championship for that season, even if you are competing in that Pro Tour. For that qualifies for that regional championship. So a lot of cool stuff going on, like just kind of at the entry level. Like these are things like RCQs, spotlights. You don't need a special invite to go. You just hand the money to the person. As the kids say, they put the fries in the bag, and you just go in there with your 60 card deck, and you try not to go 0-4.
yeah. But no, I mean you need to have you need to have your deck list, and money. Like that. These are the 3 things you need. It's very simple minded when it comes to like entry. There's no, well, did you qualify for it? Did you step through the ring? Did you do the thing? Did you collect $200? No, well then you can't compete.
Yep,
So
exactly. So obviously, there's a reason to play in these. It's because you're going to qualify for stuff. We'll start with the regional championships because that's the thing that I think players are the most familiar with. That's the thing that we've had for about the last year or two, are these regional championships, and of course hosted by Star City Games, and ideally having more Patrick, Cedric, Ailey, and Corey Baumeister coverage coming. It's gonna be really sweet.
yeah,
I don't know how much we know about the regional championships coming up. I think we just know Portland and Charlotte. I don't know if we know the next series, but they should
no,
be coming. I would expect like towards the end of 2024 into the beginning of 2025.
yeah. They'll let us know. We don't know anything really about it. I'm not sure. Do we even have the promos for? Yeah, we do. Duh.
Do we have the
The
promos for the next regional?
Not next regional, but I was thinking the promo for the next season, but we literally just talked about them 5 minutes ago, the Mayhem Double and such.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't know if we had the promos. Well, I think we had the promos for the RC. I think they told us, but I just don't remember.
Uh,
Um,
I'm not sure. I thought they said they were going to wait until closer to the event to.
they might still wait. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't really matter, right? Like the promo is not the reason why you're gonna go or not go to one of these RCs. Like, what? It's not a $40 promo. I'm not going now.
Hey, the promos are pretty sweet. I mean, that's the one from DC, and that's going to end up being backwards on the when people actually watch the video. But I mean, that's like a pretty cool art. Like it almost looks like super fake.
Yeah, it's super cool. I enjoyed the art. I finally get to say I own a seasoned Pyromancer.
Yeah.
I've yet to own that card until DC. Uh,
Unfortunately, I owned a couple copies, and that's because my wife decided that Jund was going to be the deck that she played, so I had to have some seasoned Pyromancers on deck.
Too bad Jun's still unplayable.
Well, I mean, this was like forever ago.
Oh yeah, this is when Sierra Pyromancer first came out. It was very much playable then.
Respectable.
Now you can't cast Caesar Pyromancer because we still have Bowmasters in the format.
True.
It's like, oh,
You
that's
would be
cool,
very
man.
sad.
Yeah. Go ahead and discard those cards, man. Go ahead and draw 2.
Draw 2, make 1/1s. Okay, cool. Those 1/1s are dead. I have a 3/3.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to play this game.
So yeah, like the regional championships, we don't have too much information. We basically know the important one, the next one with the promo to be announced, and the future locations. I would imagine that we would see those come up. I would think by January. I would think they would want to show that off during the Spotlight series.
Yeah, they'll come out soon enough. It's just going to be depending on where they end up being, obviously. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing how this next season or next year shakes out. I'm a little bummed that they kind of stubbed Pioneer. I had to imagine they're working off of like the old information because I don't think this last season for Pioneer did that well. But it was also Amalia or Vampires was the deck you should be playing, and there wasn't really a third option. Like you could definitely qualify for with not one of those 2 decks. I'm sure hundreds of people did, but like there's a difference when you can qualify with a not tier 1 deck and you should just be playing one of those 2 decks. So I think that like the attendance was low. I know some of the RCQs I went to was kind of a lower attendance. Like we had like maybe 20 people showing up to these, and it's just because people didn't want to play Pioneer. They're like, yeah, it's Pioneer. Like I'm not playing Amalia. I don't own Vein Rippers. I don't want to buy them. Type deal was a lot of people's like sentiment around me, for sure. And I will say too, like most of the events I went to was taken down by a Vampires deck. So it wasn't like it wasn't like, yes, it is somewhat anecdotal to like the events I went to, but then you can also see like in the challenges, in the events going on, like Vampires or Amalia still taking down most of these events. So it's just like, yeah, this is also kind of just the state of like your locals too. So I think the problem is they're working off of bad information because like that format doesn't exist anymore, and we saw through like the few RCs that have already happened where we see multiple different decks in the top 8, we see multiple different decks in the top 64, we see no one deck is taking out the entire format. Like maybe Black Red Prowess is the number 1 deck played in the tournament, but is not the top 16. Is not all Black Red Prowess. It's 16 different decks or like 10 different decks type thing. We're seeing a healthy format. We're seeing things that people want to play. We're seeing people brewing constantly, changing, evolving, and like basically what you want a format to be. Like Pioneer is like the definition of how we want a format to be, but it didn't get here until after the bannings. So they're working off, I think, just some bad information, and hopefully, I'm hoping they change either Q3 or Q4 into Pioneer, and kind of like, hey, we're working off of like we made this list back when Pioneer was different. It's a lot more healthier. People will be wanting this. They like the format now. We're gonna go ahead and switch because like we have plenty of time to switch Q3, Q4 to a different format. There's no one's bought kits for it. No one's bought anything for it. Done anything for it. There's time to change this. And I'm hoping WotC kind of realizes the error of their ways and does change this.
So I was I'm kind of in the same boat. I was thinking like, well, maybe they'll change it and whatever. But I think I think there's probably enough time where they could have came out with Q2 and Q3. We have modern, standard, Q4 to be determined. About what format it could be, and then kind of go based off that. So I think the fact that they actually just announced it, while I kind of held out hope, I think I'm taking the more pessimistic approach that I think Pioneer, for the most part, is going to be left off of the traditional path to the Pro Tour and qualifying for the regional championship even.
I think it also will be, but like I'm still like trying to hold out that like it's not going to be, but it definitely seems like they've said their piece. They know that they're not going to do anything with it, which is it's disheartening, but not much I can do, right? Like I don't control WotC. I don't own WotC. I can't make them do anything. So I mean, if that's the case, that's fine. We'll deal with it as it is. It is what it is. But I'm hoping, like I said, I hope they see the error of their ways. I hope they understand the outcry people are saying. But we'll see how they go.
Oh yeah, there's always plenty enough time to kind of change things. I know. I mean, this is like forever ago. I believe that Star City changed their invitational for their event. Like one of the two constructed formats ended up being like Pioneer as one of the constructed formats for the invitational of all things. So I mean, I definitely don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that something will change. But I also think too that they probably had enough time where they're like, well, this is going to be 9 to 12 months out. Like we'll just have Pioneer be the quarter 3 event or whatever the format, and then we'll roll with it. And I think just that's why I kind of think that, okay, well, they're just saying whatever to it. Modern is one that is always popular no matter what. Everyone always talks about how great the old format was, and we've been saying that for like the last 7-8 years, minus maybe 1 or 2 formats or 7. But that's neither here nor there. Hopefully Pioneer gets some kind of support from either other content creators, from LGSs, things like that, because I think currently right now the format's great, and who knows, maybe we'll be like, yeah, they had some pretty good foresight that Pioneer was going to suck in like 9 months, so we're just going back to another good standard format, or they're going to look silly and it's like Pioneer looks like the most diverse format of the 3 major constructed tournaments, and it's just like we were talking about standard all this time about not having more kind of attention put on it. We're going to be like, why isn't Pioneer getting the attention now? So who knows? Something we live and die by.
I do think that they have a good chance, though, of changing, having a lot of the Spotlight, the Spotlight series being like maybe Pioneer events instead. That will give you, a good reason to keep Pioneer, quote unquote, alive. I don't like the people who are like doomsdaying, like, oh, Pioneer's a dead format. Like, it's clearly not going to die, for sure. Like, that's not how that's going to happen. But I'm curious to see what happens with it as a whole.
Yeah, I think Pioneer is probably going to be fine. I would be worried about the format if we go another year and it's not featured anywhere. I don't know if this then means that standard is going to be the 3 format, and then we have modern 1 year, and then Pioneer the next year, and then Modern the other. Because I think for that, then Modern and Pioneer just essentially get kind of cut out completely, and we're just kind of stuck with Standard being the main one, which, you can only have so many, RCQ seasons, you can only have so many RCs, you can only have so many Pro Tours, whatever, in like a season where, you can't give every format 2 Pro Tours. Chances are, if you want more Standard to be featured, one of the 2 formats has to be cut out, and unfortunately, I think Modern has tenure, so like that's going to be the format people choose to play rather than playing the playing Pioneer and such.
Yeah, I will say that's probably one of the reasons. I also think, like I said, I think WotC's still working off of bad information, which obviously wasn't bad when they first made this list, because I'm sure this list was made a while ago as a whole. So, like, I'm sure this wasn't, like, bad information then, but, like, we've now seen, like I said, the most diverse this format's ever been since probably the inception of Pioneer. So, it was bad information when they were working off it. They still have trying to change it and rectify it. I also think that you going into standard's kind of bad, because it's going to burn some people out. Like, oh, cool, we get to play standard again for another 3 months. I was kind of hoping, to go to Pioneer or Modern or something that wasn't the same, decks that we've been seeing type deal. So we'll see how it all shakes out, though.
Yeah, it's a little sad, but I'm also, we've kind of shared the same sentiment. It's going to be exciting to see Standard kind of back on like the main stage, because that's really how it was, before, where like Standard was like, this was the main thing people were playing, and you had Modern or something else like Legacy like thrown in there from time to time. Standard was the draw to playing competitive Magic.
Yeah, I definitely remember, like, I really want to say, like, basically before Arena became a thing, Standard was very much alive and well in paper, and like obviously COVID was the biggest hit to all these things. Like, people want to say, oh, well, Arena was what killed Standard. I'm like, no, because Arena was around and I was playing Standard still, in paper. Like, I was going to events in paper with multiple people showing up. This wasn't like, hey man, I found 8 friends to play Standard. It was like, hey man, I found 32 people to play Standard, and it wasn't crazy. But yeah, COVID definitely killed it, and then obviously Arena then helped kill it in the sense of like you had a very easy, accessible way to play Standard that didn't revolve having to wear a mask and dealing with all the regulations and the restrictions and all that fun jazz.
Yeah, I think on top of that too, you've had some pretty miserable like standard formats too. Like thankfully, like during COVID, because then just again for the fact of, we've already had some pretty bad standard formats at the time. We had like mono red throughout like the end of Kaladesh going into like Amonkhet, mono red, black red aggro, or mid range being like the things to play. The God Pharaoh's gift decks, things like that. We've had some bad standard formats before this.
Don't forget the Theros block where we had literally every round was either are we playing against mono blue devotion versus mono black? Are we playing mono black versus mono black? Or are we playing mono blue versus mono blue?
Mm-hmm.
Those were the only matchups, and it was horrendous to watch.
You say it's horrendous to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed watching people beat down with 3-mana 5/5s.
Yeah,
Unblockable 3-mana 5/5s.
I thoroughly enjoyed doing anything else. I started watching paint dry one day because it was more interesting. There was drops forming.
My goodness. But so I think we can call it on that. So those are in a long-winded way, and free points to the home team. Kind of like your ideal way of qualifying for the regionals, and then kind of what to expect coming from the regional championships, which I believe we're going to get more information come like the Spotlight series in Atlanta at the beginning of the year. Of course, all this stuff culminates into essentially the thing that a lot of players hope to one day get to, us included, and that's the Pro Tour. We have the Pro Tour's schedule for 2025, so the players playing in the regional championships for the previous Pioneer season are going to be qualifying for the PT Chicago at MagicCon Chicago in February. And then the rest of the PT schedule looks like Vegas in June, Atlanta in September, and Worlds 31 is currently to be announced, which we could probably gather could be in Vegas just because the last few World Championships, I believe, have been at MagicCon Las Vegas, and that's been like the big premier event for Magic and that. So, yeah. Randy, do you notice something missing from this PT schedule?
Yeah, we don't like international waters.
Boats and planes are scary.
Yes. I will quickly notate real quick too the Spotlight series. The first one is happening here in North America or in the U.S. That top 8 still also qualifies you for the Pro Tour Chicago as well. So like a month after the Spotlight series, the first Spotlight series, you're going to be playing in the Pro Tour essentially if you top 8 that event. So it's kind of crazy that they're doing like these events so close together because usually like you'll qualify for the Pro Tour and then Pro Tour is going to be like 4 or 5 months away. Here's your Pro Tour. So it's kind of weird that, the Spotlight Challenge is happening in January, essentially, and then next month, hey man, you're in the Pro Tour, I hope you're prepared.
I know back when we had like actual factual GPs and stuff like that, I think that was like a possibility is that some players like could end up getting enough pro points or just get an invite, and I think most of the time you could probably defer it like, hey, like this is a week or two before this Pro Tour, like can I just defer to the next one? But I know that there's some players that have been absolute mad lads or ladies and have qualified, and then like a week or two later they're flying out to like go play in that Pro Tour like that same year, or like a week or two away, which is absolutely insane. Maybe less now, because essentially all the Pro Tours are going to be in North America, and the Spotlight series, the majority of them are going to be in North America as well. That maybe isn't like super crazy, because I mean, being in Ohio, Atlanta's a 10-12 hour drive. Chicago, I think, is like probably 8 to 10.
Depending on where you're going, Chicago's not that far though. It's closer to 4 to 6.
4 to 6. Okay, so I mean, so like, I think that's something that is technically, I guess, feasible. I guess if you're into all that driving, but
I mean, 100%. I'm gonna try to go to the Spotlight series. I'm gonna go go spike that one, get first place, get my standard sets for the next year, and I'm gonna go spike the Pro Tour, because that's the optimistic world I have to live in when I pretend that I'm good at Magic.
Just never have to worry about buying any cards in 2025. I just have all of my cards here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 2025 schedule, I don't know, because like I'm not going to get into geographically like, okay, how many players, because I mean we know that we have like the biggest regional championships in North America. I mean the one in Brazil, like South America or whatever, was like 300 some odd players, 1-day tournament. We just had ours, and it was like almost 1,900 players, 2-day tournament with players that had some pretty good records, like outside of like the top 8 and like top 16, with some pretty killer records. Like I don't think it's necessarily a surprise when I think geographically maybe that you have more players that are willing to go to these events and they're more likely to qualify for those events in North America, so you make it easier for those players and you just say like figure it out to some of the international people. But I also think that it was pretty cool having at least one Pro Tour that was overseas, just as like a just something like kind of cool. I think it was really neat that you could like essentially play a card game. You've obviously well enough off one way or another, whether in your personal life or through playing Magic. Maybe you've won enough prize money, whatever, that you're able to then take that money and turn it into an experience that like. Yeah, like you could buy a plane ticket to Kyoto and you could go to Kyoto and stuff. But I think it's something different when, like I'm going there because I'm going to go play in the tournament for a game that I absolutely love playing. And then it's like a vacation on top of also having like a purpose for actually going there. And I thought that was really cool. And I know for a lot of pro players, when you hear them talk, that was like a pretty big incentive of like being on the Pro Tour train, was just like do well at this Pro Tour. And it's in Minnesota, Minneapolis, it's in Chicago, whatever. And then like I go to the next one. Oh, this one's in like Utrecht, Netherlands. This is cool. And then you just kind of keep chaining them together and you get to see all these cool places.
Yeah, exactly. I do think it was weird that they didn't cater to the overseas crowd in any way, shape, or form. Same thing with I think like the spotlight challenges. Like maybe not so much take away like the 4 from the US essentially, or excuse me, anything like that, but like maybe just make a couple more, like put a couple more in, put a couple more maybe just like in Europe in general. Like I'm not going to classify like where in the European region, maybe one more in the Asian region type thing. Like you can put a couple more of these in here, right? Like it's not going to be crazy to do that, at least in my opinion. I'm also not a netician. I'm sure they did some kind of number crunching. Like as much as people want to make fun of like WotC for like never doing anything, or like, oh, they're so dumb, they don't know what they're doing. Like I have to believe that they have some kind of knowledge of what they're doing. Like they have to know something of what they're doing. They've been around for 20 plus years of doing these tournaments, doing these things. Like I'm sure they have enough data gathered to some degree to go, hey, well, we know that we do massive tournaments over here. Like you would think they do well, but they don't. Like we only get half the attendance that we would think we would expect, and we've seen this year after year after year. So we're going to cut down the number of here, and obviously the U.S. has probably the most Magic players per area. Like I don't think that's crazy to think or to say. I think that the next closest is probably going to be Europe as a whole, but then we're also when we talk about Europe, we're talking about multiple countries compared to the U.S. as one country. It's just also one of the largest countries basically when you compare it to like anything else. So it's not crazy like, oh, we also have the most people that play Magic. Shocker. Like country has a lot of people, also has the most Magic players. Whoa.
I'm also curious too, I guess now sitting here thinking about it, I wonder if there's just more RCQs that kind of take place in like I don't know if it's like I'm starting to question like if there's necessarily more Magic players here, but if we just have more like regional championship events, so then by extension we have more people that qualify for the tournaments, and we have like these bigger tournaments rather than maybe Europe only gets like a handful of RCQs over the weekend, where we've seen there's a handful of RCQs going on a Friday, which is like crazy to think about. But that's what I'm curious is I wonder if like we just have more invites because we just have more stores that are running RCQs or are able to run RCQs, and like the numbers are kind of inflated in that way. But I think probably easier for like the I assume that they're based. I think they're based out of Seattle, something like that.
Oh, like Wizards.
Yeah, I think they're
Yeah, they're
like a
based out of
Seattle-based
Seattle.
company.
Yeah.
So it probably just easier to like mobilize all of their people that are involved. I would guess, trying to rationalize the decision they made. Because at the end of the day, from like a personal standpoint, is it really going to affect me? No, I'm probably not that good of a player to where I'm going to be able to play in all the Pro Tours for that year and whatever. But I think just on the principle of the matter, I think it was something that was really cool for players that were able to kind of qualify. That was just kind of like a not everybody gets to go overseas, and just because you qualify doesn't mean that you're going to get to go overseas, but it's the fact that you have that opportunity and you can kind of convince yourself a lot easier to take that opportunity, rather than just on a day saying like, hey, in 6 months, I'm going to go to this country sort of deal. So
Yeah.
I think logistically, probably making that decision, it's just easier to mobilize all of its people, do coverage and everything like that. Probably better for like the streaming numbers if it's in the U.S. time zones versus international time zones. And sure, like as a content creator, it's gonna be great because it sucked being a night shift person, and then like the Pro Tour starts at 3 a.m. and I get up at 3 a.m. on like an hour and a half of sleep to then critically analyze every single game that's played in the top 8 of a tournament. but
Yeah.
but it would be just at the end of the day, I think it'd just be really cool to have that option.
Agreed. I think like I said, I think it's cool. I think it's kind of like a little shitty as a whole because, like, obviously Europe, the other countries play Magic. I'm not dumb enough to not think that. I know that for a fact. We have some amazing Magic players in the Asian region. We have amazing Magic players over in Europe. We have amazing Magic players all around the world. So to sit here and go, oh well, America has the best players. Like, no, like, do I know more American players than I do like Japan players? 100%. I also know how to pronounce the American players' names better though too. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that Japan doesn't have great players or China doesn't have great players or insert country's name doesn't have great players. So it is interesting to see. Like I said, I think it's a little bit of a stub, like a stub to the international crowd. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect me. I can't sit here and say that Wizards is dumb or smart for doing this decision. And it is what it is. Like, I'm sure it sucks for all the international players that qualify for the Pro Tour because now they have to come to America.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. I don't want to come to America either. I'm just kidding, America. You know I love you.
Jesus.
But that's essentially kind of the information that we have right now. Things to kind of expect, top to bottom from just the kind of competitive circuit that we have here. It looks very promising. I think the fact that, overall, kind of like an early impression of 2025 before we even play any single games in 2025, it looks very promising. The Spotlight Series is going to be awesome. I'm sure, Star City Games puts on a great show, and I think that, I have no reason to believe that won't continue. The interesting thing for me to see is if the split RCs actually impact attendance numbers in a meaningful way, or if we're just now going to have 2 RCs that have like 1,600 players rather than one that has almost 2,000 players.
Yeah, I'm curious to see this as a whole. I do like the fact that they continue to do what they do, like where they have Portland and Charlotte, to where like you have the east side west coast or east side west side type thing. I like it. I kind of hope they continue to do that because it helps. Like when I qualified for Denver, like that was way more travel and more like logistics I had to figure out. Like I had to fly. Like I'm not driving to Denver. The gas alone is more. The gas one way was more expensive than my round trip ticket to go to Denver. So like I can't justify driving. There's no way. Things like that. So like I had to fly, which is just not that like flying is hard or difficult or things, but it is more logistically challenging than just like, hey man, I got my bag in the car, I'm out. I left on Friday, got there. Yep. At the end of the night type thing. Like that's very easy to like logistically do. Like, oh no, something happened, I had to leave 2 hours later. It doesn't matter. I got in at midnight instead of 10 p.m. It's like, oh no, something happened, I missed my flight. That's not an issue. Like that's not just like, oh, that's easy to fix. Like, so it is nice. I like the like split here because like I can just go drive down to Charlotte if I qualify for this RC. But we'll see how that goes. since I'm not playing Border's Energy, I'm not sure how well it will go.
Yeah, see, you're just playing the anti-meta deck, the anti-hero, if you will, of the format.
Well, I mean, I'm either playing Mono Blue Belcher or I'm going to play Black Green Infect.
You know, you remember? I think maybe I brought it up in the last episode. The what was it? I think you should leave bit where he's like a professional wrestler, and he's
Yeah.
like, I don't want you to spit on me. That's just gross, man. And then we come back next week and it's like, Randy, what happened? He spit on me. And he stomped on the American flag, burned it right in front of me. I did not appreciate that.
No, I think this weekend I'm going to try to take Mono Blue Belcher and see if I can just belt some people out of the format.
You know, that sounds like a lot more fun than what I plan on doing today. Or I guess rather like this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to be an adult and do things around your house.
Yeah, you know, I gotta clean things up. I gotta make my office space look presentable. Maybe figure out if my CRT TV will actually let me play like my GameCube and stuff, because that'd be kind of nice to do on like a Saturday or something like that. I'm just saying, like I finished playing Pokemon Gales of Darkness XD, pretty sweet. Just need to kind of grind out some of the other stuff, and I would like to be able to do that like in my in my garage where it's nice and toasty right now, because I'm like absolutely sweating when it's like 30 degrees outside.
North America. Gotta love the North.
We
But
the North.
I think, I think that's all we have to talk about, really, about, the upcoming new year of 2025. Season looks good. I think it is a little standard heavy, which is either going to be good or bad. I know, obviously, Wizards is pushing, their standard format. They have the new Foundation set coming out in. Is that coming out in November?
I'm not exactly
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's coming out in November because the
Okay.
product ships in November. So coming out in November, and that's going to be a set that has essentially a lot of staples. Is what we're trying to do with that set. It's basically a core set. Like, they're just not calling it a core set.
Mm.
We no longer do core sets. They said 10 years ago, as they've now done like 4 more core sets that definitely weren't core sets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be in standard for 5 years. So I'm kind of curious to see what they come out with, what they bring in. We already know Land of War Elves and Day of Judgment's going to be in for 5 years, so that will be cool. Having essentially a good 4-mana Wrath and a good 1-mana ramp spell essentially with Land of War Elves, which was quote unquote deemed too powerful for standard at one point in time, which I heavily disagree with a lot. But I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to see where we go from here. I'm very interested as a whole with all of this. So I'm happy for it. I'm happy to see standard hopefully thriving and doing well again. And I'm hoping that having essentially 3 of the 4 quarters being standard not be a problem. Because I feel like it's going to give people a lot of burnout. But if standard's good and healthy, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and sidebar, I guess, to this, like, this is where I kind of wish there would be like the 2-year rotation instead of the 3-year rotation. But then again, I also don't think that we would need a set that's going to be legal for 5 years in standard as well. But it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, I definitely need to go through and like review what standard is now at this point, because like I haven't kept up with it for a long time. Like, the last time I cared about standard was when the RCQ season was for standard, and I kind of like tail end that because I wasn't really big into that, because I had Atlanta RCQ going on, and then I had the Denver RCQ going, or RC going after that. So like I just didn't care about the standard that was going on. And standard, like, before that, the last time I thought about standard was pre-COVID. So like it was just like I had to kind of relearn everything. I need to relearn now and kind of see where everything fits. All I know is I'm playing Caretaker's Talent for the entirety of that card's legalness and standard.
Oh
I like
yeah.
rabbits. I like drawing cards. I like making my tokens big.
Amen. I'll drink to that.
Exactly. So I am curious though to see how it all shakes out. But I'm hesitantly excited for this next season coming up. I think it's going to be good.
I hold out hope. I think that if things kind of go well, then this would be, the return to normalcy-ish that we kind of had, where, like we had said, 100 times, and we'll say it 101 times. The standard was essentially like the golden child of constructed. That was the main format people played. Sometimes you get like a random one-off for modern or something like that. So maybe that's kind of the shift that we're seeing here. Hopefully, again, we enjoy Pioneer. Hopefully Pioneer makes some kind of return in some way, maybe through a spotlight tournament of something of that nature. That'd be really nice.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see. It'd be nice to see them bring it back. But I'm like I said, I'm hesitantly happy with how it's going, and I think at this point we're just now in the wait and see type period. Was this Wizards, Hail Mary to make standard good, quote unquote, in the sense of like, is standard strong enough to hold 3/4 of the RCQ season, or is this going to be like, wow, Wizards really missed the boat on that. Thank God we're going to modern next. At least we get a break, and it's like, oh, cool, 2 more seasons of standard. Good job, Watchy. Always messing up.
Hey, we got him.
But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about the competitive play. How's it going, or what's it doing? I think we kind of covered everything.
Yeah, I think we're good. That's gonna do it for this episode of the Casual Spikes podcast. Let me know, or let us know. Excuse me. Sorry, I got in my YouTuber rant there.
Yeah.
But let us know in the comments down below what you think of the competitive season, what maybe your predictions are. If you're going to miss Pioneer, if you care that, any of the stuff that's actually kind of going on with any of the formats that we mentioned, or maybe even something, I don't know, any ideas that you have that could make it better, we're interested in hearing about it, so go ahead, leave them down in the comments down below. Subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Randy, all that stuff's going to be in the description down below of this video. And that's going to do it for us. Hope you all enjoyed the episode, and we'll catch you all later.